How to break bad habits and addictions. Fast, 6 proven steps. Everyone has a habit they wish they could quit. Maybe it's scrolling on your phone for hours without realizing it. Maybe it's procrastination, junk food, gaming, nicotine, pornography, alcohol, or simply wasting valuable time doing things that move your life further away from the person you want to become. The frustrating part is, most people already know their habit is hurting them. They know it's stealing their time, their energy, their confidence, sometimes even their relationships. Yet every time they promise themselves, this is the last time, they find themselves repeating the exact same behavior a few days later. If you've ever experienced this, you're not weak, you're not lazy, and you're certainly not alone. Because breaking a bad habit isn't simply a battle against willpower. It's a battle against a system your brain has been strengthening for weeks, months, or even years. The good news is this: what your brain has learned, your brain can also unlearn. Not overnight, but much faster than most people think when you follow the right process. Today, we're going to explore 6 proven steps that can help you break bad habits and addictions by changing the environment, the triggers, and the routines that keep them alive. Because the goal isn't to become someone with stronger willpower. The goal is to become someone who no longer needs to fight the same battle every day. The first step is identifying your trigger. Most people focus only on the habit itself, but every habit begins much earlier than the action. There's always a trigger, a cue, a moment that quietly tells your brain it's time to begin the routine. Sometimes it's boredom, sometimes stress, loneliness, anxiety, fatigue, or simply walking into a familiar room. Imagine someone trying to stop eating unhealthy snacks. They blame themselves every evening, but they never notice what actually happens before they open the kitchen cabinet. Maybe they just finished work. They're mentally exhausted. They sit on the couch, turn on the television, and without thinking, their brain automatically reaches for snacks. The television wasn't the problem. The snack wasn't the beginning. The trigger was exhaustion combined with a familiar environment. This is why awareness changes everything. For the next few days, instead of asking, "Why did I fail?" ask, "What happened immediately before the habit started?" Write it down. Where were you? What time was it? How were you feeling? Who were you with? The more patterns you discover, the easier they become to interrupt. The second step is making the bad habit difficult. Most bad habits survive because they're incredibly convenient. Your phone is always within reach. The junk food sits on the kitchen counter. The cigarettes stay in your pocket. The gaming console waits beside your desk. Your brain naturally chooses the path requiring the least effort. So change the environment. Delete the distracting apps. Move unhealthy food out of your home. Log out of accounts that tempt you. Place barriers between yourself and the behavior. Every additional step creates friction, and friction weakens automatic behavior. Remember, you don't rise to the level of your motivation. You usually fall to the level of your environment. The third step is replacing the habit, not removing it. This is where many people struggle. They try to eliminate a habit without replacing the need it was satisfying. But habits almost always serve a purpose: stress relief, comfort, entertainment, escape, connection. If you remove the habit, but ignore the need, your brain simply searches for another unhealthy solution. Instead, replace it. If stress triggers smoking, try walking for 5 minutes. If boredom triggers endless scrolling, read 1 page of a book. If anxiety leads you to emotional eating, drink water first, take a short walk, or call someone you trust. The replacement doesn't need to be perfect. It simply needs to interrupt the old pattern. The fourth step is making success incredibly small. One of the biggest mistakes people make is expecting perfection. They promise themselves they'll never repeat the habit again, forever. That pressure becomes overwhelming. Instead, focus on today or even the next hour. Tell yourself, "I only need to make one better decision." Small victories create confidence. Confidence creates momentum. Momentum creates identity. Breaking an addiction isn't usually one enormous decision. It's hundreds of tiny decisions repeated consistently. The fifth step is expecting setbacks without accepting defeat. Many people relapse once, then immediately conclude they've failed. But imagine learning to ride a bicycle. Would one fall convince you that riding is impossible? Of course not. Recovery works the same way. A setback is information, not proof that change is impossible. Ask yourself, what triggered it? What could I change next time? How can I make the next decision easier? Progress isn't measured by never falling. It's measured by how quickly you stand back up. Every return strengthens the new habit you're trying to build. The sixth and perhaps most powerful step is changing your identity. Most people say, I'm trying to quit smoking, or I'm trying to stop procrastinating. Notice the word trying. Instead, begin asking a different question. What would a healthy person do? What would a disciplined person choose? What would someone who values their future decide right now? Every small decision becomes a vote for the person you're becoming. When you repeatedly act like that person, eventually, you no longer feel like you're pretending. It becomes your identity. And identity is far stronger than motivation. There's another truth that's easy to forget. Your brain loves immediate rewards. That's why bad habits feel so powerful. They usually provide pleasure now, while the consequences arrive later. Healthy habits often work in the opposite direction. The effort happens now, the reward arrives later. This is why patience becomes one of your greatest strengths. You're investing in a future version of yourself, one decision at a time. You may not notice dramatic changes after one day, or even 1 week, but something important is already happening beneath the surface. Every time you resist the old habit, the old pathway inside your brain becomes slightly weaker. Every time you repeat the healthier replacement, the new pathway becomes slightly stronger. That's how neuroplasticity works. Your brain constantly adapts to what you repeatedly practice. The person who once automatically reached for their phone now automatically reaches for a notebook. The person who once escaped stress through unhealthy habits now manages stress through healthier routines. It doesn't happen because they suddenly become more motivated. It happens because repetition rewires behavior. Think about walking through a field covered with tall grass. The first time you walk across it, the path barely exists. Walk the same direction every day, and eventually a clear trail appears. Your habits work exactly the same way. Every repeated behavior creates another path inside your brain. If you stop using the old path, nature slowly begins reclaiming it. Meanwhile, the new path becomes easier, clearer, and eventually automatic. One day, you'll face a situation that used to trigger your old habit. Only this time, you'll respond differently without even thinking about it. That's the moment real changes happen. Not because temptation disappeared forever, but because your default response changed. People may look at your transformation and believe you suddenly became disciplined. They'll think you found some secret technique, some perfect strategy. Only you will know what really happened. You'll remember the small choices, the difficult evenings, the moments when nobody was watching, the times you chose one better decision instead of one familiar mistake. Those ordinary moments quietly built an extraordinary result. So if you're trying to break a bad habit today, don't ask yourself, how do I become perfect? Ask something much simpler. What is the next healthy decision I can make? Then make it, again tomorrow and the day after that. Because freedom isn't built through one heroic moment. It's built through thousands of ordinary choices, repeated consistently until the person you used to be becomes someone you barely recognize. And that's how real transformation begins. Not with willpower alone, but with small decisions, repeated long enough to completely rewrite your future.